At first glance, my life with Mark seemed like a page ripped straight out of a glossy magazine. We were the perfect pair, the enviable couple. I, Monica, the diligent accountant, and he, the dashing new head of the department. Our story began at the office, where quick chats by the coffee machine blossomed into a whirlwind romance. Can't believe my luck, Mark would often say, his arm wrapped around me. From colleagues to life partners, it's like we were meant to be. I'd smile, nod, and play along. Yeah, who would have thought? The dream team, both at work and home. But as the pages of our story turned, the dream began to show its cracks. After we moved into my personal home, Mark's true colors started to seep through the facade of the perfect husband. He wanted the traditional setup, him the breadwinner, me the housewife. It's how it should be, Monica, he'd insist. My mom did it, your mom did it. It's tradition. I wanted to argue, to say that times had changed, but I swallowed my words. The prospect of starting a family, of building our little world, was too tempting. So I hung up my accountant's hat and embraced the role of a housewife, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. The first drops hit when I noticed the trail of socks and underwear Mark left around the house. Seriously, Mark, am I married to a man or a centipede? I'd joke, trying to keep the mood light. He'd laugh it off, clueless or indifferent to the chaos he was creating. Come on, Monica. It's just socks. No big deal. But it was a big deal. It was the dishes left by the TV, the pizza boxes on the armchair, the complete disregard for the sanctity of our home. I tried to talk to him, to make him see reason. Mark, this isn't working. You need to clean up after yourself. This is our home, not a frat house. His reaction was always the same. Anger, defensiveness, and a barrage of excuses. I work all day, Monica. I don't have time for this. You're the housewife, remember? This is your job. Cooking, cleaning, trying to keep the peace. It was a never-ending cycle, a dance I performed to the tune of Mark Sims. But beneath the surface, resentment simmered, a silent scream against the life I was trapped in. Life with Mark's parents felt like a constant invasion. They had this way of just storming into our house, their presence as subtle as a sledgehammer. They never bothered to call ahead. They just showed up, expecting to be fed and entertained. One afternoon, I was caught off guard by the sound of the doorbell. As I opened the door, there they were. Mark's parents, bags of shopping in hand, looking like they just claimed victory in some sort of retail battle. Well, aren't you going to invite us in, Monica? Mark's mom, Judy, asked, with a tone that brooked no argument. I managed a weak smile, stepping aside. Of course, come on in. They made a beeline for the kitchen, settling themselves at the table as if it was the most natural thing in the world. We thought we'd stop by, you know, save you the trouble of cooking for just you and Mark, Judy declared, unloading her shopping bags with a clatter. Yeah, and we figured you'd appreciate the company. What's for lunch then, Monica? I felt a pang of irritation. My home, my sanctuary, had turned into a pit stop for their convenience. I was just about to make some sandwiches, I said, trying to hide my frustration. Sandwiches turned into a full-blown meal as I found myself chopping, stirring, and frying, trying to meet their unspoken expectations. Mark wasn't any help. He just slumped on the couch, his eyes glued to the TV, completely oblivious to the circus in the kitchen. Later, after they'd left, I tried to talk to Mark about it. Your parents can't just drop by like this, Mark. It's exhausting. I can't even relax in my own home. He barely looked up from his phone. Oh, come on, Monica. They're just being friendly. It's not a big deal. I could feel my patience wearing thin. It is a big deal, Mark. I'm not here to wait on you and your parents hand and foot. I need some space, some respect. But my words seemed to bounce right off him. They're family, Monica. That's just how family is. Besides, they think you enjoy it, he countered. I'd look in the mirror, the reflection staring back at me, a far cry from the woman who once walked the office halls in sharp suits and high heels. Now it was all baggy sweaters and messy buns, my appearance a casualty of the endless demands of my home life. I missed those days, the click-clack of my heels, the sense of purpose each morning brought. Now, my days were a whirlwind of pots and pans, of cleaning up after uninvited guests who treated my home like a pit stop. As the days turned into months, life with Mark grew colder, the distance between us widening like a chasm. His behavior started changing, subtle shifts at first, then more pronounced. A new haircut that made him look years younger, suits that screamed of trying too hard, and a scent that wasn't his usual. It was like he was morphing into someone else, someone I didn't recognize. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just a phase, a midlife crisis maybe, but the nagging suspicion in my mind refused to be silenced. Mark, is there something you're not telling me? I finally asked one evening, the words spilling out before I could stop them. We were sitting at the dinner table, an ocean of silence between us. He looked up, startled, like he'd been caught off guard. What do you mean, Monica? I'm not hiding anything, he replied, but his eyes darted away too quickly, his words a little too rushed. It's just, you've changed, Mark. The clothes, the perfume, it's like you're a different person. I persisted. He let out a forced chuckle, but there was no warmth in it. Come on, Monica. A man can't spruce himself up. I'm just trying to keep things fresh, that's all. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the doubts once sown refused to be uprooted. They grew, fed by his late nights at the office, the weekends he was suddenly too busy, the texts he'd quickly hide when I walked in. The truth, however brutal, couldn't be ignored any longer. So when he stood up at one of those awkward dinners with his parents, his announcement hit me, not like a surprise, but like a confirmation of what I'd already known deep down. I'm filing for divorce, Monica, he declared, his voice steady, devoid of any emotion. I've met someone else, someone young, vibrant. She's everything you're not. The words cut through the room, leaving a trail of shock and disbelief. His parents looked from him to me, their expressions a mix of confusion and dismay. Mark, what are you saying? This is your wife, for heaven's sake, his mom exclaimed, her voice a mix of anger and disbelief. Yeah, son, you can't just throw away your marriage like this, his dad chimed in, his brow furrowed in concern. But Mark was relentless, his words a dagger twisting in my heart. It's decided. I want a family, a son, and Monica. Well, she's not up to it. She's let herself go. It's time for a fresh start, he declared. His mistress. He painted her like a trophy, a prize he'd won, while painting me, his wife of 5 years, as a worn-out shoe, discarded and forgotten. The divorce papers he slid across the table were just a formality, his signature cold, impersonal, a stroke of ink. But as I took them, something inside me shifted. The pain, the betrayal, it sparked a fire, a determination to not let this be the end of my story. Fine, Mark. I'm offering you a probation period, I said, my voice steady, my resolve firm. 3 months. If you succeed, I will give you a divorce without further ado. His smirk said it all. He thought he'd won, thought he'd broken me. But little did he know, he'd just awakened a sleeping tiger. Mark packed his things, his smugness almost tangible as he prepared to move in with his mistress. I watched him, my expression unreadable. Enjoy your probation period, Mark. Make sure she's worth it. His grin was all the confirmation I needed, that he had no idea what was coming. The moment he left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was time for a fresh start, and not just for me. The moment I suggested the probation period, I knew it was a gamble. My friend Lisa thought I'd completely lost it. We sat in my kitchen, the room still echoing with the remnants of Mark's departure. Monica, this is madness, Lisa exclaimed, her eyebrows knitted in concern. You're just giving him a free pass to walk all over you. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through me. No, Lisa, this isn't surrender. It's strategy. Mark thinks he's playing me, but he's actually walking right into my trap. Lisa looked skeptical, her arms crossed. And what about his parents? They treat your place like a drive-through. You going to let that slide too? A smirk tugged at the corner of my lips. Oh, they're part of the plan too. Just wait and see. Sure enough, the very next day, as if on cue, Mark's parents barged in, their uninvited presence as predictable as ever. This time, though, I was ready. I stood in the doorway, blocking their path with a newfound resolve. Monica, dear, move aside, we're famished, Mark's mom Judy declared, trying to push past me. Not so fast, I said, standing my ground. You're both on a 3-month probation period, just like Mark. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. Probation period? What nonsense is this? Mark's dad, Ron, blustered, his face turning a shade of red I hadn't seen before. You heard me, I continued, my voice calm but firm. It's time for some ground rules. My house isn't a diner, and I'm not your personal chef. Respect that or find somewhere else to eat. Judy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But we're family, Monica. You can't just. I can, and I am. I interrupted, the power of taking control surging through me. Family or not, everyone needs to respect my space. You've had a free pass for too long. Ron looked like he was about to argue further, but Judy placed a hand on his arm, a silent signal. They exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, with a huff, Ron nodded. Fine, Monica, we'll respect your probation period, he grumbled, the words clearly leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. The silence in the house was deafening after Mark and his parents left. It was the first time in years I had the space to just breathe. I looked around, taking in the quiet, and something inside me clicked. This was my chance, my time to rediscover the Monica I'd buried under layers of compromise and sacrifice. I started with small steps. First, it was the clutter Mark had left behind. I gathered his things, boxing them up, each item a farewell to the life I'd known. This is for you, Monica, I whispered to myself. No looking back. Next, I tackled the mirror. The reflection staring back at me was a far cry from the vibrant woman I used to be. Time to change that, I said, my voice a mix of determination and excitement. I rummaged through my closet, pushing past the shapeless clothes I'd hidden behind. Deep down, I found the outfits I'd worn back in my accounting days. Sharp, chic, a reminder of the competent woman I was. I dressed, the fabric feeling like armor, and for the first time in ages, I smiled at my reflection. The transformation didn't stop there. I hit the ground running, literally. Each morning, I laced up my sneakers and pounded the pavement, the rhythm of my steps a chant of empowerment. You're doing this, Monica, for you, I'd tell myself as the miles flew by. My diet changed too. No more quick fixes or catering to uninvited guests. I cooked for one, savoring each meal as a celebration of my newfound independence. The beauty salon became my sanctuary. I sat in the stylist chair, the buzz of the scissors a melody of change. Just do it, I told the stylist. I'm ready for a new me. And so, my hair was cut, my style revamped. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't just see Monica. I saw strength, resilience, the beauty of a woman reborn. One evening, as I reveled in the quiet of my home, Lisa dropped by unannounced but always welcome. Her jaw dropped when she saw me. Monica, is that really you? She gasped, her eyes wide with amazement. I laughed, the sound rich and genuine. The one and only, I replied. What do you think, Lisa? She circled me, her expression one of pure awe. I think, I think Mark won't know what hit him. You're stunning, Monica, truly. The compliment warmed my heart, but I knew the transformation ran deeper than appearances. It's not for Mark, Lisa, it's for me. I'm rediscovering the Monica I lost, and you know what? She's pretty amazing. Lisa hugged me, her support as unwavering as ever. She always was, Monica. She always was. With my confidence restored and my spirit unbroken, I took the next step. I dusted off my resume, the document a testament to my skills and achievements. Interviews were lined up, each one an opportunity, a doorway to the future I was building for myself. 2 months after Mark's departure, my quiet routine was interrupted by a call that I had anticipated, yet it still held a tinge of surprise. Mark's name flashed on my phone screen, and I answered with a mix of curiosity and a well-concealed sense of triumph. Monica, I need your help. Mark's voice came through, tinged with a desperation I hadn't heard before. She's left me, he said. Said she couldn't deal with my habits, the socks, the mess. I'm alone, Monica. I leaned against the kitchen counter, a sly smile playing on my lips. Really, Mark? That's unfortunate. But what exactly do you want from me now? His voice cracked slightly. I want to come back, Monica. I realize I made a mistake. Can we meet, please? The words I had been waiting to say came out smoothly. All right, Mark. Let's have dinner this Saturday at our place. We'll talk then. I could hear the relief mixed with a note of triumph in his voice. Thank you, Monica. I'll be there. I knew you'd give us another chance. After the call, the wheels in my mind began to turn. This dinner would be more than just a meal. It would be my stage. I promptly called Mark's parents, extending the invitation for what I knew would be an unforgettable evening. Judy, Ron, I thought you should join us for dinner this Saturday. Mark will be there, I said, my voice steady and inviting. Judy's response was quick and enthusiastic. Oh, Monica, that's wonderful news. We've been so worried about you two. It's about time things went back to normal. Ron's voice rumbled through the phone. Yes, we're looking forward to it, Monica. It's good to have the family back together. Little did they know that normal was the furthest thing from what this dinner was going to be about. I spent the next few days planning, not just the menu, but also how I would articulate the newfound clarity and strength I had garnered in their absence. Saturday arrived, bringing with it a moment I had anticipated, yet dreaded. The doorbell's chime echoed through the house, a herald of the impending confrontation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. There stood Mark, suitcases in tow, a smirk painting his face. Behind him, Judy and Ron loomed, their expressions a mixture of hope and silent expectations. I knew you'd come to your senses, Mark, his voice dripping with a misplaced confidence as his eyes roved over the new me. Wow, Monica, you look incredible. See, I told you she'd come around, he said, turning to his parents with an air of triumph. Judy chimed in, her voice tinged with relief. Oh, Monica, we're so glad. It's about time things got back to how they were. I motioned for them to sit, my demeanor calm but firm. Please, let's settle down. We have much to discuss. As we gathered in the living room, an awkward tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. Mark, with a misplaced sense of victory, took the lead. Monica, I can't tell you how good it is to be back. I've missed this, missed us, and you've really changed. I met his gaze, my own unwavering. I didn't change for you, Mark. I changed for me. What you're seeing isn't a welcome back, it's a goodbye. The shock on his face was mirrored in his parents' expressions. Judy's hand flew to her mouth, and Ron's furrowed in confusion. What do you mean, Monica? Judy managed to ask, her voice a quiver of disbelief. Mark left because he thought he'd found something better. But life outside wasn't what he expected, was it? I said, turning my attention back to Mark, who seemed to shrink under the weight of my words. It's not like that, Monica. I realized I made a mistake. That woman, she was nothing compared to you. She left because she couldn't handle, well, the things you always took care of. Mark stuttered, his bravado fading with each word. You mean your mess? Your irresponsibility? I corrected him sharply. And now you think you can just waltz back in here, back into my life? Judy interjected, her voice laced with desperation. But Monica, he's realized his mistake. Can't you give him another chance? No, Judy. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill, not destroying a marriage. And Ron, you both need to understand that my home is not your convenience, I continued, addressing each of them, making sure my stance was clear. Ron, who had been silent, finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. But we're family, Monica. Family sticks together. That's just it, Ron. Family respects each other. Mark disrespected our marriage and you both disrespected my home. That's not family. That's taking advantage, I said firmly. Mark, now fully deflated, made one last plea. Monica, please, I have nowhere else to go. It's too late for promises, Mark. We're done. And as for having nowhere to go, that was your choice when you left. I've moved on. You gave me these divorce papers, I said, holding them up, and I signed them. We've been officially divorced for 2 months. The room went silent, the shock palpable in the air. Mark's parents looked from him to me, disbelief written all over their faces. You're divorced? Judy finally managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded. Yes, and now I'd like Mark to collect his things and leave my house. And Judy, Ron, I wish you well, but from now on, my home is my own, I declared, the finality in my tone brooking no argument. Mark was grasping at straws now, desperation clear in his voice. Monica, please, I made a mistake. I'll change. I promise. I'll clean. I'll cook. I'll do anything. But my decision was firm. It's too late, Mark. It's over between us. And just so you know, I got a job as an accountant while you were away. I don't need you to take care of me. He was floundering, his pleas becoming more frantic. But Monica, you can't do this. I have nowhere to go. That's not my problem anymore, Mark. If you don't leave, I'll call the police, I said, my tone leaving no room for negotiation. At that point, Judy and Ron stood up, their faces a mix of disappointment and realization. They approached Mark, each taking one of his arms. Let's go, son. You've made your bed. Now you have to lie in it, Ron said, his voice heavy with resignation. Before they left, Judy turned to me, her eyes softening. Monica, you're right. Our son was a fool to let a woman like you go. Life after Mark and his parents' departure settled into a rhythm that was all my own. I heard bits and pieces about Mark through the grapevine, friends who couldn't help but share the latest gossip. They said he was living with his parents again, struggling to find his footing in a world where he couldn't just rely on someone else to clean up his messes. Monica, you won't believe what I saw today, Lisa said one afternoon, her voice a mix of amusement and disbelief. Mark was at the grocery store, and let me tell you, he looked rough, hair all over the place, clothes mismatched. It's like he's lost without you. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of vindication. Well, Lisa, that's what happens when you take everything for granted. Eventually, you have to face the consequences. The word was that Mark tried his hand at dating again, but no surprise, it didn't go too well. The same issues that drove me away were now driving away other potential partners. He's demanding, Messy, just a lot to handle, a mutual friend shared. No one wants to put up with that. I nodded, a sense of closure enveloping me. Some lessons are learned the hard way, I said, not without a hint of satisfaction. As for me, life had taken a turn for the better, a stark contrast to the disheveled, pathetic figure Mark had become. I got a job as an accountant again, my mind sharp, my contributions valued. The office was a buzz of activity, a place where I thrived, surrounded by numbers and reports. And it wasn't just my career that had taken a turn for the better. My personal life was blossoming too. There was someone new, someone who was everything Mark wasn't. His name was Daniel, and he brought a sense of calm, a respect that I had longed for. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, my life was a testament to resilience, a story of rising from the ashes. Mark, now just a distant memory, was a reminder of what I had overcome. I was Monica, no longer the shadow of someone else's demands or expectations.
My name is Brenda, and I have an incredible tale to share with you. I'm 33 years old, and until recently, I was employed as a cosmetologist at this posh clinic in the heart of the city. It wasn't a horrible job, you know. I got to help people feel good about themselves, and I got paid well. But I've always had this itch, this desire to be the boss of my own business. I'd like to introduce you to the second important character in this messy little drama, which is my spouse, who is actually my ex-husband, but we'll get to that juicy bit later. Identify him as Jack. Jack, who is 5 years my senior, was formerly a manager at a well-known construction company. We've been living at my apartment for the past 3 years of our marriage. Jack would add, sipping a drink on the couch, "Baby, I'm telling you, opening your own place is the way to go. You'd decide your own hours and be in charge. Is that the dream? Correct?" I would nod, a sense of exhilaration rising within me. "Yeah, you're right, but it's going to take a lot of work and money to get there," I'd respond. Jack would dismissively wave his hand. "It's nothing to worry about. We'll work things out. I'll help you get it going as you do. You concentrate on being a fierce company owner." I thus began to save. There were no more expensive dinners, new clothes, or anything else. Every additional cash went into my business fund. I had a goal in mind. Jack would always say, "Geez, Britt, you don't have to be so strict," when I would decline to get takeout for the third time in a row. I'd say, "Every dollar counts, Jack," and reheat some leftover food. We agreed on this, remember? He would complain, then nod. "Indeed, you are correct. In the end, it will be worthwhile." It's definitely time for me to bring up Jack's prior marriage. After their divorce, he told me he had left his flat to his ex-wife. I knew little more about them than that they had been together for 5 years. He would act quite cynical whenever I tried to bring it up. After several months, I felt at last prepared to make the move. I resigned from the clinic, obtained my license, located the ideal small space, and began remodeling. Making decisions on what equipment to acquire and how to decorate took up every day. After what seemed like an eternity, I was at last prepared to open. I put in a ton of overtime 7 days a week, from sunrise to far after sunset. In those first 2 weeks, I didn't see Jack very often. He would be asleep when I got home. He was still snoring when I got up in the morning. My phone started vibrating a lot one day when I was getting a facial. Since I'm a professional, I first disregarded it. But I became concerned when it persisted. What if Jack had suffered a setback? I checked my phone as soon as my client departed and discovered that my mother-in-law Sandra had missed 5 calls. My stomach fell out. Sandra only ever made crucial phone calls. With my heart racing, I gave her a call back. "Sandra, is everything okay?" With a trembling voice, she murmured, "Brenda, thank goodness." Jack and I had been attempting to communicate all day. He's involved in some sort of scandal at work, and I'm having trouble reaching him. I'm very worried. I had the impression of being drenched in icy water. Scandal? What controversy? Sandra, I have no knowledge of any scandals. I haven't heard anything from Jack. On the other end of the telephone, there was a prolonged silence. "Oh," Sandra at last uttered, "I see. Okay, ask him to phone me if you hear from him. I was up all night waiting for Jack. Near midnight, he staggered in, his breath heavy with beer. Where have you been? Trying not to raise my voice too much, I asked. Your mother has been reaching out to you all day. Something concerning a workplace scandal. Jack froze, then sighed deeply. He slouched down on the sofa, avoiding eye contact. Perhaps I ought to have informed you earlier. About a month ago, I left my work. It was as though someone had taken the wind out of me. A month? You haven't had a job for a month and you never thought to bring it up. What took place? He said angrily. I got into a fight with my boss. He was acting in a It was just too much for me to handle. My pride prevented me from staying. I inhaled deeply as I attempted to comprehend this shocking news. Jack had been at home the entire time while I was pushing myself to the bone. Why didn't you look for another job? I responded. Jack gave me a beseeching look. I believe I'm exhausted, Britt. I should take a break. Perhaps I should visit a psychologist. I simply cannot bear to start a new career at this time. I wanted to scream at him in part. Damn it, we had a plan. He was meant to help us out while I launched the company. However, observing him sitting there, dejected and diminutive, I found it difficult to confront him. At last, I said, Okay, we'll resolve this. But Jack, no more secrets. Our role is to work as a team. With a look of relief on his face, he nodded. I apologize, Britt. No more secrets, I swear. I had no idea that would be the first of many promises he would breach. The ensuing weeks were difficult. I began taking on additional shifts at my previous practice, working afternoons at the clinic and mornings at my office. It was tiresome, but I had no other option. In addition to paying my office loan back, we also had bills to pay. Jack played video games most of the time he was at home, ostensibly searching for work online. I made an effort to be encouraging and kept telling myself how vital mental health was. But when the weeks stretched into months, I began to question whether he was actually making an effort at all. And then, at last, a ray of optimism. One day, Jack returned home beaming from ear to ear. He exclaimed, I got a job. I could have cried with relief. That evening, we raised a bottle of wine in celebration of our fresh starts. It seemed for a little moment that everything might work out. Jack worked there for just 1 month. One day, after a particularly demanding day, I found him slumped on the couch, a beer in his hand, staring at the TV without making any sense. I uttered, You're home early, with a sickening feeling in my gut. With a shrug, he continued to stare at the television. Quit. It was as though I had taken a punch to the gut. What? Why not? Jack mumbled. Boss wanted me to be a robot that was obedient to commands and disciplined. Ignore that noise. Trying not to lose my temper, I took a deep breath. Jack, we discussed this earlier. We simply cannot afford for you to continue leaving jobs. At last, he gave me a hard look. What? Am I meant to be unhappy? Britt, I had hoped you would be more sympathetic. I was furious inside, but I refrained from starting a fight by biting my tongue. Getting the picture? He was sitting around sipping beer and playing video games, and I was pushing myself to the bone. The ensuing half-year was a haze of labor, strain, and growing annoyance. When I returned home, Jack was waiting for me with empty beer cans and takeout cartons all around him. Any luck with the job search? Attempting to control my desperation, I would beg. Nothing good out there. He would dismissively wave his hand in response. I'm looking for something interesting, with good pay, but not too demanding. I was itching to yell. A job like that, who wouldn't want one? However, those occupations weren't handed to you. They required labor from you. One evening, following an especially demanding day, I arrived home to see Jack was genuinely awake. His eyes were filled with an odd, animated expression. "Britt, I've been thinking," he began, yanking me onto the lounge next him. "We should have a baby." I looked at him, certain that I had misheard. "What? Yes, give it some thought." He smiled. "I might become a stay-at-home parent. I would look after the child while you went to work. It's flawless." I was hearing things that I couldn't believe. "You haven't even cleaned a plate in this place, Jack. How are you going to look after a child?" His expression dimmed. "What, you don't think I could do it?" I tried to seem diplomatic by saying, "It's not that. It's just that taking care of a baby is a lot of work, and we're not exactly in a great financial position right now." Saying in a hushed voice, "You're being cruel. You don't understand my problems." I laughed, a short, harsh sound. "Your problems, Jack? I'm working 7 days a week. I'm exhausted, and you want to add a baby to this mess?" He stormed off, slamming the bedroom door behind him. I sat on the couch, my head in my hands, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. It started with the computer games. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs a hobby, right? But then I noticed our joint account was hemorrhaging money. "Jack," I said one evening, my voice tight with frustration, "did you buy another game? And did you upgrade your computer?" He didn't even look up from the screen. "Yeah, so what? It's our money, isn't it?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "We're supposed to be saving, remember? For our future." He paused the game and turned to me, his face a mask of innocence. "Babe, it's an investment in my leisure time, you know. Don't worry, I'll pay it all back when I get a job." That was the last straw. The next day, I closed our joint account and stopped giving Jack money altogether. If he wanted to act like a child, fine, but I wasn't going to be his personal ATM anymore. I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. The fight started almost immediately. Jack would stomp around the apartment, slamming doors and muttering under his breath. "You don't respect me," he'd yell. "You're trying to control me." I tried to reason with him. "Jack, I'm just trying to keep us afloat. We can't keep spending money we don't have." He stormed off, leaving me standing in the kitchen, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. Days went by, and Jack didn't lift a finger around the apartment. Dishes piled up in the sink, laundry overflowed the hamper, and takeout containers littered every surface. I was working myself to the bone, and he couldn't even be bothered to run a vacuum. Then came the day that changed everything. I came home early from work, a migraine pounding behind my eyes. As I approached our apartment door, I heard Jack's voice drifting through the open window. "Yeah, Mom, I need a new suit for this great new job," he was saying. "Could you spot me some cash? I'll pay you back as soon as I get my first paycheck." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. New job? What new job? I burst into the apartment, startling Jack so badly he dropped his phone. "What new job, Jack?" I demanded. He stammered, trying to come up with a lie on the spot, but I'd caught him red-handed. "You were going to take money from your parents for a job that doesn't exist?" I was shaking with anger. "I was going to tell you," he mumbled. "Tell me what?" "That you're a liar. That you'd rather scam your own parents than get off your ass and find a real job." The fight that followed was epic. We screamed, we cried, we said things we couldn't take back. In the end, Jack grabbed a bag and stormed out, saying he was going to stay with his parents for a while. As the door slammed behind him, I sank to the floor, my head in my hands. I was successful. I was driven. I had my own business. And yet here I was, married to a man who seemed determined to drag us both down. The days after Jack stormed out were weird. I kept expecting him to come crawling back, full of apologies and promises to do better. But as one day turned into 2, then 3, then a week, There was nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a lousy email. Part of me was relieved. The apartment was peaceful for once. No more walking on eggshells, no more cleaning up after a grown man who acted like a teenager. But another part of me was worried. What if something had happened to him? Just when I was starting to consider calling his parents, my phone rang. Jack's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart pounding. "Jack, where are you? Are you okay?" His voice came through loud and cheerful. "Hey, babe, guess where I am? Las Vegas. Can you believe it? Mom always wanted to come here, so we decided to make it a family trip. It's amazing." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Las Vegas, while I was here worrying about him. "What do you mean, we decided?" I asked, my voice tight. "When did you decide this?" "Oh, it was kind of spur of the moment," he said, his voice nonchalant. "I told Mom and Dad about my great new job offer, and we thought, why not celebrate?" I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "What job offer, Jack?" "We both know there isn't one." There was a pause. Then Jack's voice came back, lower this time. "Look, what they don't know won't hurt them, right? We're having a great time. I'll find a job when we get back, I promise." "And how exactly are you paying for all this?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Oh, don't worry about that," he said, his voice bright again. I borrowed a couple of your credit cards. But don't freak out. I'll bring you back a magnet or something, okay? Have a great weekend." And then he hung up. Just like that. I stood there staring at my phone, feeling like my whole world was crumbling around me. This man, this person I had married, had stolen my credit cards to fund a vacation based on a lie. Something inside me snapped. I was done. No more second chances, no more excuses. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and blocked every single one of my cards. Then I called the locksmith. "I need my locks changed," I said. "Today, as soon as possible." The locksmith came and went, and I was left alone in an apartment that suddenly felt too big, too empty. But I wasn't done yet. I grabbed my phone and made one more call to a divorce lawyer. Sitting in the lawyer's office later that day, I felt a strange mix of emotions: sadness, anger, fear, but also relief as I signed the divorce papers. I realized this was the first step towards taking back control of my life. I was just settling in for a quiet evening at home, the first in what felt like forever, when my phone started buzzing. Jack's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "Britt, thank God you picked up." Jack's voice was frantic. "Something's wrong with the cards. They're not working. We can't pay for anything." I could hear the panic in his voice, but felt oddly calm. "That's because I blocked them, Jack." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. "You what? Why would you do that?" "Because they're my cards, Jack. I didn't give you permission to use them." "But we're stranded here. Mom and Dad are freaking out. You have to unblock them." I could hear the desperation in his voice, but I stood my ground. "No, I don't have to do anything. You got yourself into this mess. You can get yourself out." That's when he lost it. "Are you kidding me? You're putting me in an impossible situation here. You're my wife. You're supposed to help me. Unblock the cards right now, or I swear to God I'll divorce you." I burst out laughing. A full belly laugh that felt like it was coming from someplace deep inside me that had been locked away for too long. "Oh, Jack," I said once I could speak again, "you're a little late for that threat." And I hung up. The next day, I rented a storage unit and packed up all of Jack's things. Every shirt, every game console, every little knick-knack that reminded me of him. It all went into boxes and then into storage. I knew Jack would be coming home soon, probably expecting to waltz right back into our apartment like nothing had happened. Well, he was in for a surprise. Sure enough, a few days later, my phone rang again. Jack's voice was a mix of confusion and anger. "Britt, what the hell? I can't get into the apartment." "Yes, I did," I said calmly. "Your things are in a storage unit. I'll text you the address and unit number." "My things? What are you talking about? Let me in." "Britt, this isn't funny." I took a deep breath. "This is it. I'm not joking, Jack. I've filed for divorce. The papers should be arriving at your parents' house any day now." There was a long silence. "Divorce? Britt, come on. You can't be serious. We can work this out. Let's start over, okay? I'll do better, I promise." "It's over, Jack," I said firmly. "I've made my decision. Please don't contact me again except through my lawyer." I blocked his phone and hung up. I was filled with a strange mixture of feelings as I sat there in my lonely apartment. Relief, anger at all the lies and treachery, and sadness for what could have been. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a very long time. My phone called with an unknown number a few days after I banned Jack's number. Thinking that Jack might be attempting to contact me from a different phone, I almost chose not to answer, but I had to pick up for anything. "Hey," I spoke carefully. "Sandra here, Brenda, Jack's mom." My tummy tightened. I anticipated the inevitable outburst of rage about spoiling their family vacation, being a bad wife, and abandoning my man. I said, "Sandra," attempting to sound impartial, "I apologize for the events that occurred in Las Vegas." But she interrupted me. "No, Brenda, it's my responsibility to apologize. I'm very let down by Jack. I believed that he had evolved." "Explain what you mean," I inquired, my interest piqued. On the other end of the telephone, there was a lengthy sigh. "Brenda, you should be aware of this. As he told you, Jack's first marriage ended not because of a growing distance between them. His former spouse parted ways with him due to his carelessness, deceit, incapacity to maintain employment, and pilfering. It was as though I had taken a punch to the gut. He didn't tell me." "I am aware," Sandra muttered. We hoped that living with you, observing your diligence and maturity, would motivate him to change, to mature." I could hear the sadness in her voice as she faltered. I experienced a wave of empathy for her. She had fallen for the same tricks that I had. "I'm so sorry, Sandra," I murmured. "I was clueless." "No, Brenda, I apologize," she firmly said. "We apologize for not providing you with the complete information from the start. I apologize for letting you go through this. Furthermore, I apologize beyond words for what Jack did to you." Tears began to form in my eyes. "I'm grateful," I muttered. Sandra went on. "I want you to know that we kicked him out when we found out the truth. How he had been lying to you for months. How he had stolen your credit cards. And how he had been lying to us about having a job. Right now, he is not welcome in our house." I was unable to speak. Jack's family was the one I was most afraid would judge me, and here they were, supporting me. Sandra remarked, "I don't blame you for divorcing him, Brenda. You are so deserving of better. I only hope that Jack's actions don't make you think poorly of the rest of us." "No, without a doubt not," I blurted out. "I never laid the blame on you or your spouse, Sandra. You've shown me kindness consistently." We continued our conversation, with Sandra enlightening me on some of the information I had overlooked. After we hung up, I had the impression that something heavy had been removed from my shoulders. In this, I wasn't by myself. I wasn't crazy to feel furious and deceived. The weeks that followed my talk with Sandra were when everything began to fall into place. I lost myself in my profession and took comfort in my cosmetology office's rituals. Without Jack's incessant drama and financial burden, I discovered that I had more focus, energy, and, surprisingly, money. But Jack was not going to give up easily. While I was closing up the business one evening, I noticed someone I knew was leaning against my car. My heart fell. "Britt!" I walked over and heard Jack shout out. "Please allow us to speak. I've evolved. I really do want a job, and I'm looking for one now. I will return every penny to you. Please give me another opportunity." I briefly had a sense of nostalgia or sympathy, but then I remembered everything he had done to stress and hurt me. All the falsehoods, all the broken promises. "No," I firmly said. "Jack, I'm done giving you opportunities. Kindly depart." I slid past him and climbed into my car, trembling as I turned on the engine. He was standing there, appearing lost, in my rearview mirror as I was leaving. However, I didn't go back. That was my final encounter with Jack in person. He made several more attempts to call from other numbers, but I was able to stop them all. Eventually, there was no more controversy, and the divorce was finalized. Furthermore, what do you know? Things improved in life. Much improved. My own finances significantly improved when Jack's unemployment and spending were no longer a constant source of stress. I was able to give my cosmetology office my whole attention, and it showed. Word of mouth spread, my clientele expanded, and before long, I was busy than ever. I decided to give up my part-time work at the clinic and devote all of my attention to running my own company. Although it was unsettling at first, it ended up being the finest choice I could have done. Having more time and energy allowed me to dedicate myself entirely to marketing and growing my business. To help with the growing workload, I brought on 2 other cosmetologists, and all of a sudden I wasn't just a cosmetologist, I was a manager. The financing I had taken out to launch the company was repaid early. The ongoing concern about just scraping by has vanished. I felt confident in my finances for the first time in a long time. However, it went beyond money. I began to treat myself to small indulgences, like the shoes I had been eyeing for months, weekend getaways, and elegant dinners out. Things that I had previously always convinced myself we should set aside all of our money for some undefined future that would never seem to come. Looking over the blueprints for our new treatment room from my enlarged office, I can't help but be amazed at how much has changed. I've moved past just getting by. I'm doing great. And I completed it all by myself. Please understand that it wasn't always simple. There were times when I want to return home and celebrate my accomplishments with a companion. But as I created a life I genuinely valued, those times grew fewer and farther between. In retrospect, I see that divorcing Jack wasn't the end of my story. That was the start of it. That was the time I made my decisions about my goals, my future, and myself. Furthermore, what do you know? In a heartbeat, I would choose to do it over again.
My name is Robin, and my narrative starts in a house that never felt quite right. My father was a manager of a trade firm, and my mother was a successful dentist at a private clinic. After they were married, Dad moved in with Mom. A year later, I arrived, and for a time, everything seemed ideal. Dad arrived home early one day, his face contorted with rage. He said, "I quit," and threw his briefcase onto the couch. That damn boss can find someone else to push around. Weeks grew into months as days continued to pass. The TV and Dad's game controller clicked and clanked around the home. The alcohol stench started to permeate everything. I wasn't blind, but I was young. When Mom returned home to discover Dad sprawled on the sofa with empty cans all around him, I saw the tightening of her grin. Mom would struggle to say, "John, you need to find a job." "Sarah, I'm searching. What can you expect from me?" Dad would yell back. "There's nothing out there that matches my skills and pay grade." Their disagreements became into a daily habit. I used to hide in my room and attempt to muffle their irate sounds by covering my ears with a pillow. Mom used to send me to Aunt Lisa's place during their biggest arguments. Living only a 15-minute drive away were Aunt Lisa, Uncle Mark, and my cousin Tommy, who was a few years younger than me. I had a great time at their place. There was always laughter and warmth in it. Aunt Lisa would bake cookies that would fill the home with the aroma of vanilla and chocolate. And Uncle Mark would teach Tommy and me how to play board games. As she tucked me in at night, Aunt Lisa would murmur to me, "You know you're always welcome here, sweetie." No matter what. That bit of speech saved my life. Even though I cherished my parents, I never felt more at home than I did at Aunt Lisa's. After a particularly vicious disagreement one day, I heard Mom in the kitchen chatting with Aunt Lisa. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," Lisa, her mother, said. "But I have to try for Robin's sake." I wanted to tell her not to, that I would understand if they broke up, but the words refused to come out of my mouth. I mean, I was only a child. What was it that I knew about love and marriage? I had no idea that things would become much more difficult. Dad had finally found work, but the position came with a lot of travel for work. It appeared to be a godsend at first. The home was quiet after Dad was gone. Mom would have quiet dinners with me and help me with my schoolwork. But as the months passed, I became aware that something wasn't quite right. The expression on Mom's face when Dad called to let her know he would be gone for an additional week. The quiet phone calls Mom would have with Aunt Lisa when she believed I couldn't hear them. My world collapsed when I was just 8 years old. The doorbell rang on a calm Tuesday afternoon as Mom was assisting me with my arithmetic homework. Her expression when she opened the door to a man I had never seen before struck me as confused. With a tense voice, the guy introduced himself as Robert Hanson, John's supervisor, and said Mrs. Thompson. Mom brought him into the living room, and I observed from the top of the stairs. Even though they were speaking softly, I could tell they were tense throughout. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this," Mr. Hanson said, "but your husband has been having an affair with my wife." There was an unbearable quiet for a while. I watched Mom's hands begin to tremble. "That isn't feasible," she said. "John's been on business trips." Mr. Hanson took an envelope out. "Unfortunately, no, they are shown together in these pictures. The times. They do, however, correspond with a few of his alleged work travels." From where I stood, I couldn't see the pictures, but I could see the crease in Mom's face as she glanced at them. Mr. Hanson's tone became a little softer. "My wife and I are divorcing. I believed that the truth should be known by you. Use this information any way you see fit." I discovered Mom crying as she sat on the sofa after he had departed. She wiped her tears hastily when she spotted me. "Robin, honey, I need you to go stay with Aunt Lisa for a few days." "Okay." She attempted to grin, but her voice was weak. Mom and Dad need to have a serious talk. I had no idea what to do, so I just nodded. I could not get Mom's teary expression out of my head as Aunt Lisa drove me to her house. After a few days, Mom finally arrived to fetch me up. Dad wasn't in her group. "Where's Dad?" While driving home, I inquired. Mom's knuckles on the steering wheel became white. "My sweetie, Dad and I will be living apart for a bit. We are divorcing each other." I had a wave of both relief and grief. It appeared as though things could improve for a time. Just the two of us established a new routine with Mom. But after that, everything was different once more. It all began with Mom's constant fatigue. The day she discovered a lump came next. I recall clutching my mother's hand when we sat in the doctor's office, and the doctor broke the news that would alter our lives forever. "Cancer." Mom responded, "We'll fight this, Robin," in a voice that was louder than I had ever heard. Together. However, our time apart wasn't prolonged, as just when I believed I had seen him for good, Dad gracefully returned into our life. "I've changed," he said, standing on our doorstep with a bouquet of flowers. "I want to be here for you both." I wanted to slam the door in his face, but Mom let him in. She was too tired, too scared to fight anymore. Life took on a surreal quality after Mom's diagnosis. Our once orderly home became a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, chemotherapy sessions, and Dad's attempts at playing caretaker. "I quit my job," Dad announced one day, puffing out his chest like he deserved a medal. "Someone needs to take Sarah to her treatments and look after you, Robin." I wanted to believe him. I really did, but even at 9 years old, I could see through his act. The house grew messy by the day, with Dad only bothering to clean when Mom was due back from the hospital. "Robin, sweetie, can you tidy up a bit?" He'd ask, not even looking up from his phone. "Your mom's coming home tomorrow." I did my best, but what could a 9-year-old really do? The dishes piled up, laundry overflowed, and dust gathered on every surface. I wanted to tell Mom to ask for help, but I couldn't bear to add to her worries. One day, I overheard Aunt Lisa talking to Uncle Mark in hushed tones. "Can you believe that bastard?" she hissed. "He didn't quit, he got fired. His boss kicked him out for sleeping with his wife." My heart sank. It was just another lie in a long string of deceptions. Then came the day that shattered what little faith I had left in my father. Aunt Lisa was driving me home. Early, Mom was in the hospital for another round of chemo, and Dad was supposed to be waiting for me. We walked into the house without knocking. The sound of giggles and creaking bed springs filled the air. Aunt Lisa's face turned red with fury as we stood there, frozen in the hallway. "John Thompson," she bellowed, "get your ass out here right now." Dad stumbled out of the bedroom, hastily zipping up his pants. Behind him, a woman I recognized as Mr. Hansen's ex-wife peeked out, clutching a sheet to her chest. "Lisa," Dad said, his voice annoyingly casual. "You're early." Aunt Lisa was shaking with rage. "How dare you? Your wife is fighting for her life, and you're here." Dad just smirked. "Come on, Lisa. Sarah's sick. A man has needs." I felt sick to my stomach. Aunt Lisa opened her mouth to yell again, but Dad cut her off. "You won't tell Sarah about this," he said, his voice suddenly cold. "It would only make her condition worse. You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you?" Aunt Lisa's face paled. She grabbed my hand and pulled me out of the house. "I'm so sorry you had to see that, Robin," she said as we drove away. "Your father, he's not a good man." I nodded, feeling numb. "I know," I whispered. "I don't love him anymore." For the next year, I lived in a state of constant tension. I'd go to school, pretending everything was normal. I'd visit Mom in the hospital, holding her hand and telling her about my day, carefully omitting anything about Dad. Then one cold autumn morning, the call came. Mom was gone. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a world that suddenly made no sense. Aunt Lisa held me as I sobbed, while Dad just stood there, looking almost relieved. The day we buried Mom was the hardest of my life. I stood there, numb and hollow, as they lowered her casket into the ground. Dad put on quite a show, sniffling and dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. A week after the funeral, we met with Mom's lawyer. I sat there, picking at a loose thread on my black dress, as the lawyer cleared his throat and began to read. "To my beloved daughter, Robin," he said, "I leave all my worldly possessions, including our family home and all my savings." The room went dead silent. I looked up, confused, to see Dad's face turning an ugly shade of purple. "What the hell?" He exploded. "That can't be right. I'm her husband." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "I'm afraid it's all very clear, Mr. Thompson. Your daughter inherits everything. She'll be able to manage the property from the age of 18. Dad whirled on Aunt Lisa, who was sitting beside me. He snarled. You put her up to this, didn't you? Poisoned her against me. Aunt Lisa just looked at him, her eyes cold. Sarah knew you, John. She knew you better than you think. We left the office with Dad still ranting. For the next few days, he barely looked at me, as if I was the one who had betrayed him. But I was too lost in my grief to care. 3 months crawled by. I was sitting in my room one afternoon, flipping through an old photo album, when I heard unfamiliar laughter from downstairs. Curious, I crept down to find Dad in the living room with a woman I recognized all too well, his mistress, Mr. Hansen's ex-wife. Robin, Dad said, his voice falsely cheery. Come meet Candy. She's going to be living with us now. Candy gave me a wide fake smile. Hi, sweetie. You should call me Mom from now on, okay? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She is not my mother. I spat out over the next few days. Candy went on a rampage through our house. I watched helpless and furious as she packed away all of Mom's photos, her knickknacks, everything that made the house feel like home. We need to make room for our new family, she chirped, ignoring my glare as she shoved another box of Mom's things into the attic. I retreated to my room, clutching the few photos of Mom I'd managed to save. As I sat there, surrounded by the last remnants of my mother's presence, I made a silent promise. I won't let them erase Mom. Life in what used to be my home became increasingly unbearable. Dad and Candy settled into a lifestyle of lazy indulgence that made my stomach turn. They never worked a day, content to live off the rent from Candy's apartment and the monthly allowance that came into my account, money Mom had left for my care. See, Robin, Dad would say, sprawled on the couch with a beer in hand. This is the good life. No need to work ourselves to death like your mother did. Candy was no better. She'd spend hours online shopping, boxes of clothes and makeup arriving almost daily. We deserve nice things, she'd say, modeling yet another new dress. Meanwhile, I was growing out of my clothes, my shoes falling apart. When I'd ask for money for new ones, Dad would scowl. Christ, Robin, do you ever stop growing? Do you know how expensive it is to raise a teenager? They'd go on lavish vacations, leaving me behind with Aunt Lisa and Uncle Mark. Part of me was relieved to escape the toxic atmosphere at home, but another part felt the sting of rejection. As my 16th birthday approached, I realized I couldn't rely on Dad for anything anymore. I needed my own money, my own independence. That's when I saw the Help Wanted sign in the window of Joe's coffee shop. That first shift was brutal. My feet ached, my arms burned from carrying trays, and I went home smelling like coffee grounds and dish soap. But I felt a spark of pride I hadn't experienced in years. When I got my first paycheck, I almost cried. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I'd earned it. What's this? Dad asked one day, noticing my new phone. Where'd you get the money for that? I got a job, I said, bracing for his reaction. He snorted. A job? What do you need a job for? We provide everything you need. I bit back a bitter laugh. They provided the bare minimum, spending most of my money on themselves. But I just shrugged. I wanted some extra cash. As the months went by, I worked every shift I could get. I saved every penny, hiding the money in a locked box under a loose floorboard in my room. Slowly, I built up a wardrobe of clothes that actually fit, bought school supplies without having to beg, and treated myself to small luxuries like books and art supplies. More importantly, I was building something else: confidence, independence, and a burning determination to take control of my life. As I approached my 18th birthday, a sense of anticipation filled me. Freedom was so close I could almost taste it. But life, as I'd learned, had a way of throwing curveballs when you least expected them. It started with the sound of hammering and drilling. I came home from school one day to find the house in chaos, with workers tramping in and out. "What's going on?" I asked, dodging a man carrying a bucket of paint. Candy waddled over, her face flushed with excitement. She grabbed my hands, her eyes sparkling. "Oh, Robin, we have wonderful news. We're having a baby." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Dad appeared behind her, grinning from ear to ear. "Isn't it great, kiddo? You're going to be a big sister." I forced a smile, feeling more alone than ever. "Yeah, great." As the weeks passed, I watched as they transformed the house. New furniture arrived, walls were repainted, and baby items started appearing everywhere. I felt like a ghost in my own home, invisible and unwanted. Then, a month before my 18th birthday, everything fell apart. I came home from school exhausted after a long shift at the coffee shop to find the door to my room closed. A cute little sign hung on it, reading "Baby's Room" in pastel letters. "Dad, Candy." I called out, a sense of dread filling me. They appeared from the living room, Candy's pregnant belly leading the way. Dad had a strange look on his face, a mix of satisfaction and determination. "Robin," he said, his voice oddly formal, "Candy and I have been talking. We need your room for the nursery. We think it's best if you move out." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Move out? But where am I supposed to go? Candy bustled forward, shoving a suitcase into my hands. "Don't worry, I packed your things myself. You should thank me, really. I made sure to include all your important stuff." I opened the suitcase, seeing a jumble of clothes and a few personal items. Everything else, my books, my art supplies, the mementos of Mom, were gone. "But this is my home." I stammered, tears welling up in my eyes. Dad's face hardened. "Not anymore. It's time for you to grow up, Robin." I fled, suitcase in hand, tears streaming down my face. I found myself at Aunt Lisa's doorstep, sobbing as I told her what happened. Aunt Lisa's face turned stormy. Those. She took a deep breath, visibly calming herself. "Don't worry, sweetie. You'll stay with us. This isn't over." She marched to the phone and called her lawyer, explaining the situation in rapid-fire words. I sat on the couch, feeling numb as she talked. Finally, she hung up and turned to me, a fierce light in her eyes. "Robin, listen to me. That house, it's yours. Your mother left it to you, remember? You can't officially manage it until you're 18, but in 1 month, you'll be able to do whatever you want with it." A spark of hope ignited in my chest. So they can't just kick me out. Aunt Lisa shook her head. "No, they can't. And once you're 18, you can kick them out." For the first time in years, I felt a smile, a real, genuine smile, spread across my face. 1 month, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Just 1 more month. As I settled into Aunt Lisa's guest room that night, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, but also a growing sense of determination. Dad and Candy thought they'd won, that they'd finally gotten rid of me, but they had no idea what was coming. The morning of my 18th birthday dawned bright and clear. I woke up feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness, knowing that today was the day everything would change. Uncle Mark drove Aunt Lisa and me to the house, my house. As we pulled up, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. We marched up to the front door, and I knocked loudly, my heart pounding in my chest. After a moment, the door swung open. Dad stood there, his face darkening when he saw us. Behind him, Candy waddled into view, her pregnant belly even bigger than I remembered. "What are you doing here?" Dad demanded, not even acknowledging that it was my birthday. I straightened my shoulders, looking him directly in the eye. I made today, Dad, or did you forget? He scowled. That doesn't explain why you're here. Without a word, I handed him the envelope containing the eviction notice. His face turned red as he read it, his hands shaking with anger. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "It's an eviction notice," I said calmly. "You have 1 month to vacate the premises." Candy burst into tears. "You can't do this," she wailed. "I'm doing a few weeks." "Where are we supposed to go?" I felt a twinge of guilt, but I pushed it aside. "You have an apartment, don't you? The one you've been renting out. You won't be homeless." They started shouting, then calling me cruel, ungrateful, a monster. I stood my ground, Aunt Lisa and Uncle Mark flanking me supportively. "We're not leaving," Dad yelled. "This is our home." I stepped forward, pushing past them into the house. "No, it's not. It's my home, and if you won't leave voluntarily, I'll have no choice but to involve the police." Dad sputtered. "I put money into this place, all the renovations, with Mom's money." I reminded him, "You haven't spent a dime of your own." He lunged forward, looking like he might actually hit me, but Uncle Mark stepped between us. Dad backed down immediately, the fight going out of him. Candy, still sobbing, tugged on Dad's arm. "John, what are we going to do? The tenants in my apartment won't be out for a month." I shrugged, feeling a coldness I didn't know I possessed. "That sounds like a you problem. But I'll honor the law. You have 1 month from today, not a day more." We left them standing there, shocked and angry. As we drove away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my life. The month following my 18th birthday was a war of attrition. Dad and Candy, bitter about their impending eviction, did everything they could to make my life miserable. They'd accidentally break dishes, leaving shards for me to clean up. I'd come home to find walls freshly stained with paint splatters, always small enough to be deemed accidental. The house I'd grown up in, the home my mother had lovingly cared for, was becoming a battlefield. "Oops," Candy would say with fox innocence after knocking over yet another vase. "Pregnancy makes me so clumsy." I gritted my teeth and endured, counting down the days until I could reclaim my space. Then one day before their month was up, Candy went into labor. I watched from my window as Dad rushed her to the car, speeding off to the hospital. A plan formed in my mind. I spent the next few hours in a whirlwind of activity. I packed up their belongings, every shirt, every knickknack, every reminder of their presence. I lugged boxes to the garage, filling it to the brim. Then I called a locksmith to change the locks. As night fell, I heard a car pull up. Angry voices filled the air, followed by pounding on the door. "Robin, open this door right now." Dad's voice boomed. I stood on the other side, heart racing, but resolve firm. "Your month is up. You need to leave." "Are you insane?" he shouted. "We have a newborn baby. You can't do this." Candy's wails joined the cacophony. "Please, Robin, have a heart." For a moment I hesitated, but then I remembered all the times they'd shown me no mercy, no consideration. I said, "Your things are in the garage. I advise you to grab them and head back to your place. I'm going to call the cops if you don't leave in an hour." I remained resolute despite their derogatory remarks and their use of every foul word in the book. An hour later, I watched through the glass as they packed their belongings into their car, Candy cuddling their baby and giving me angry looks as they sped out. Dad looked red-faced with rage. I experienced a wide range of feelings, including grief, relief, and a sense of closure. My life had ended one chapter and was starting a new one. The following several weeks passed in a haze. I thoroughly cleaned the entire house, removing any traces of Candy and Dad. I put Mom's pictures back where they belonged and felt her presence with me as I took back our house. I chose to live in the dormitories when it came time for college. After being alone for years, I wanted to experience life and be with people my own age. Are you sure you want to give the house a rental? As she assisted me in relocating to my dorm room, Aunt Lisa inquired. I gave a nod. It's a sensible course of action. In addition, I suppose I have too many memories there to be ready to live there permanently. She gave me a shoulder squeeze. I comprehend. You should not fear. I will watch over the area on your behalf. I experienced a freedom I had never felt before as I became used to college life. I immersed myself into my academics, joined clubs, and made friends. Gradually, the burden I had been bearing for years started to disappear. My phone buzzed one evening as I was studying in my dorm room. It was a text from Dad. I hadn't heard from him since the eviction until that moment. Candy and I are having trouble. The infant requires items. Could you please assist us? I spent a considerable amount of time staring at the message while a flurry of emotions went through me. Then I blocked his number with a firm click. It would be considered cruel by others, but I knew it was essential. I couldn't recover if I continued to be around that poison. I wanted to pay tribute to Mom by using the resources she had given me to create a better future.
My name is Anna. I was a 33-year-old housewife. I had been married for a year, but I hadn't conceived. My husband, Sean, loved kids and had been excited about having his own from the beginning. But the storks never came. Sean grew impatient and urged me to see a doctor. I went to see an OBGYN, and after numerous tests, the doctor concluded there was nothing wrong with me. Relieved, I shared the news with Sean. However, instead of relief, Sean declared, "I'm sorry, but divorce me." Why? "There's nothing wrong with me," I protested. "I just want to try to have a child as soon as possible. Who knows when you will conceive if I stay with you," he explained. I was speechless. It had only been a year since we got married. I had already proven my fertility. "Why can't you wait a bit longer?" I asked. "You're already 33. You'll be too old while I wait," he callously remarked. "I want my child to have a young, beautiful mother." I was devastated. His words lingered, and I wondered if his view of marriage was as shallow as treating his wife as a means to have children. I tried hard to persuade him not to divorce me, but he was adamant. We parted after only 1 year, leaving me heartbroken and depressed, unable to think about anything else. As the months passed, I began to see his true colors. He didn't love me as much as I thought. He viewed me merely as a tool to have kids. 2 years later, my friend Christy revealed the truth. Sean had a shotgun marriage with his new girlfriend, she disclosed. "I've known you both since college. He was apparently seeing his new wife while you guys were still married." "He was cheating on me?" I asked in disbelief. "He planned to use you for not getting pregnant while he was fooling around outside his marriage," she explained. I was shocked. Christy advised, "Don't waste your time being sad about him. Find a new guy." I finally moved on after this. A year later, I got married again. I had been part-timing at a call center after the divorce and met Peter, who was 2 years older. After a healthy year of dating, he proposed to me. "I'm very happy, but am I not the one for you?" I asked. "No, it's not you. I might have trouble conceiving," he confessed. "What do you mean?" I inquired. I told him in detail about how my ex and I got divorced. "Oh, that's all." He laughed it off. "Didn't the doctor confirm that nothing was wrong with you? Besides, conception is something a couple has to work together. Don't think of it as all your responsibility." His comments brought tears to my eyes. Even if we weren't fortunate, we would just live our own life together. I will never forget his warmth when he held me in his arms as he said this. I was truly happy in my new marriage life. He took the initiative in doing housework and handling things around the house. Maybe because I was single for a long time, but it led me to him. So thank God for that. He sat with a shiny smile, which was so cute. He was good at Italian cooking too, and often cooked for me. Sean had never done any housework, and I believed all men were like him, so it was a nice surprise. I must have been really fulfilled. I found out I was pregnant 6 months after our marriage. During a routine checkup, the doctor said, "Congratulations!" I returned home in disbelief and gave the news to Peter. Seriously, hooray! He picked me up by the waist in his excitement. "Hey, put me down!" I exclaimed. Sorry. Too much for the baby." He immediately put me down and stroked my stomach. "I'm happy that you're excited, of course. It's ours." I saw him trying to hold back tears, and I almost cried. "It's thanks to you. I feel so peaceful with you. I think that's why I was able to conceive. Take good care. Don't push yourself too hard." "I know," I reassured him. The next 9 months were like a dream. I hardly got morning sickness, and as soon as I reached the 2nd trimester, I went shopping with Peter. It was so much fun preparing for the baby. One day, I received a call from Sean, a week before my due date. Contemplating for a second, I answered the phone. "Hello?" "Hey, Anna, it's me." "Yeah, it's been a while." "I heard from Christy that you're having a baby. Is it true?" "Yeah, it is." "Why?" "Because I thought you couldn't get pregnant." What the heck was he talking about after all this time? I was lost for words. I guess I should have been a bit more patient. He made an unbearable joke. "Are you kidding me? By the way, how's it going with your new wife?" "Oh." He played dumb. "What are you talking about? It's none of my business. Anyway, bye." I hung up on him with a careless tone of voice, wondering about the purpose of his call. I shared the incident with Peter when he got home from work. I didn't divorce him out of hatred, but it's creepy for him to call after all this time. I expressed my concern. "Maybe he had a fight with his wife and wanted to vent on you," Peter suggested. He didn't sound like that. He even made a weird remark that he should have been more patient. "Maybe he wanted to congratulate you?" "Of course not. You're so naive," I chuckled. And I thought he was such a good-natured guy. Feeling foolish for being upset, I changed the subject to the baby. "It's a girl. My doctor revealed this to me the other day. We discussed her name again." Peter's face brightened with joy. "I can't wait to meet her." Exactly after 1 week, the baby was born. We named her Valentina, which means healthy and strong. When Peter held her in his arms, he cried and thanked me over and over. After I was discharged, I spent my days struggling to raise my baby. Peter was very helpful, but there were many things we weren't sure of and felt miserably. I wish our reliable parents were here at times like this. Oh well, both our parents live far away. Don't you want to go back home with Valentina for a bit? No, don't worry. It doesn't matter how hard it is. I want to stay here with you and her. We were exhausted after many sleepless nights of crying, but just looking at Valentina's face soothed me. 3 months passed, and by the time she was on a 50-50 split of milk and formula, we were finally able to sleep better. Then one day, Christy came over with a baby gift. "Oh my God, so adorable," she exclaimed in a whisper when she saw Valentina sleeping in her cot. "Congratulations, Anna." "Thank you. I'm so glad you came." "I wanted to come sooner. Sorry." "Doesn't matter. You're very busy with work. I'm just glad you finally got to meet her." We sat down with cakes she brought and coffee. Valentina was the main topic of our conversation at first. After I poured the second cup of coffee, Christy switched the subject. "I know it's not the best time to tell you this as you're in the happiest place, but will you listen to me? What's wrong?" "Well, it's about Sean. He had a baby right away with his current wife, so he believed that you were the problem. I expected that. But when he found out you were pregnant, he changed his mind and started saying it may have been him with the problem. Way too late now, and I wondered if his head was okay. He does have a child, doesn't he? So what's the problem?" "He is an idiot. He is determined that it isn't his and accuses his wife of cheating." She looked disgusted. "What in the world? That's over the top, don't you think?" When he mentioned it, I really thought he was a true idiot. So was he really serious? Yeah, he seemed. Even so, she consulted him. You know what he said to me then? "Once a cheater, always a cheater. I can't trust her anymore." Say what? He should be looking at himself in the mirror before commanding. Both of us were appalled. His wife was furious and went back to her parents after a big fight. "I can't blame her," I remarked. He was lost and whining about what to do, but I yelled at him it was none of my business. I laughed at my imagination of him being flustered. "Anyway, he is going through a turmoil, so they worry that he might bother you." "No worries. I've got nothing to do with him anymore." "I know, but he is illogical right now." I appreciated her concern and was reminded of her kindness. Hour blocking on my phone. That's better. I'll make sure he doesn't bother you again. We heard the cry from Valentina, who woke up from her slumber then. I picked her up in my arms. Christy asked to hold her with her arms stretched towards me. While we were cooing over the baby, I completely forgot about Sean. A month passed, and I kept busy taking care of Valentina. Sean had never contacted me, but then his wife suddenly showed up with her child at my door. She got my address from Sean's mother. I informed them in case they needed me for anything. The wife of Sean was called Susan. She looked young, probably in her 20s, and was very pretty with big, striking eyes. Her son Tate was almost 2 years old and looked exactly like his mom. While we sat down on the sofa, Tate played with Valentina on the floor. "I'm very sorry for showing up like this. I have been wanting to apologize to you." Susan started the conversation first. "Apologize? That's right. I had no idea Sean was married when we were dating. But then I felt guilty after what happened. I was perplexed and didn't want her to mention it after all this time. You came all the way to apologize to me?" "No, we decided to get divorced. What about you and Sean?" "Yes. It's not your concern, but I want to talk to you, so I showed up." She started pouring out her frustrations. Her story was indeed shocking. Sean had yelled obscenities at her, so she showed him the proof of paternity with the DNA test. Then wasn't the problem solved? Not at all. He used to call me dirty and said he married me only to have a child. He degraded me until the result came out. As soon as he was assured, he said, "Oh, good. Now we can have another child without worry." He turned 180 degrees. Can you believe it? She wasn't finished with her ranting. I for sure was a mistress, but that's because he lied to me. She banged the table. "Calm down. Don't frighten the children," I urged. "I'm sorry." She snapped out of her rage and hung her head down. So, you decided to divorce him? Right. He thinks women are tools to make babies. It doesn't need to be me. I understood her so well. That was exactly how I felt back then. If you asked me if I felt hatred towards her, it might slightly be true. However, the children are innocent. I looked at them playing happily and felt some pity for them. Fortunately, Sean's parents are on my side. They are astounded by his foolishness and even banned him from their house. They've always been good people. I agree. I have no idea how a son like that came out of them. We looked at each other and laughed. He is demanding custody, but I would never allow that. If he continues to argue, his parents tell me to get an attorney. And what are you going to do from now? I'll move back with my parents and look for a job. Best of luck to you. Thank you so much. I thought you might understand me, so I came to see you. Also, I'm worried that the idiot might stop bothering you. Please watch out. I had lost the resentment towards her for our strange bond. We both don't have a knack for choosing men. I don't think so. You found a wonderful husband in the end. You still have a long way to go. She was all smiles when she left. I assumed we'd never meet again and wished for her happiness. A month later, Christy called and updated me that Susan and Sean's divorce was finalized. I changed my number so that I was never bothered by Sean. However, he was still telling people that it was my infertility that caused the problem back then. What a small guy. He keeps saying if you became pregnant sooner, that wouldn't have been any trouble. Christy was outraged over the phone. I was so fed up with him that I gave him an ultimatum in front of everyone. What did you do? I transferred him to a smaller branch. In fact, she was Sean's boss. She was excellent and had risen to the rank of department head. Isn't that abuse of authority? The enemy of women is the enemy of society. As she laughed out loud, I murmured, "The end for Sean. There's nothing wrong with wanting children, but if a man treats a woman like a tool to get what he wants, he has no right to exist in this world." He's reprimanded by his wife and his boss, but he supposedly continues his disdain for women. Even at this new office, he's paying the price for getting involved with someone. There's no medicine to cure a fool. Maybe I'll curse him to have his private part chopped off.
I had no desire to work for the family firm. I was determined to leave my mark in the corporate sector after earning honors in financial management from college. My resume had already drawn interest from a number of prominent companies, and I was eager to start my career from the beginning. However, life had other ideas. I'm Alice Chen, and I was always the one in charge, but Tommy, my older brother, was the golden child, incapable of doing anything wrong. He received the most expensive clothing, the newest technology, and, above all, our parents' full attention. Early on, I developed my ability to support myself by putting all of my energy into my education and working part-time during the summers at our company. Our family has owned Chin Global Trading for 3 generations. It began with simply 2 shipping containers of electronics from Taiwan, thanks to my great-grandfather. It had developed into a reputable mid-sized business that handled imports from all around ASTA by the time my father took it. I never imagined that I would be heading the company, even though I knew it inside and out from my summer jobs. Tommy was destined to be like that. My father once remarked, "Alice, we need to talk," in a tone that was extremely solemn. Over supper at his workplace, I had just finished informing him about a potential interview with Goldman Sachs. "What's wrong, Dad?" I asked. He gestured for me to sit down, his face lined with worry. "The company, it's not doing well. We're losing money faster than ever before." I felt my stomach tighten. I thought Tommy was learning the ropes. You always said he'd take over. Dad's face flushed with embarrassment. Your brother, he's not ready. Yesterday, he expense reported a $5,000 dinner with clients at that new French restaurant. When I asked him about the business discussed, he couldn't remember a single detail. And what does this have to do with me? I asked, although I was beginning to see where this was going. I need you to take over as CEO, he said simply. You're smart, responsible, and you know the business. The company needs you, Alice. I sat there stunned. For years, I'd been told this was Tommy's birthright. Now suddenly, because he couldn't handle it, they wanted me to step in and fix everything. What about my own career plans? I protested. I worked hard for this. Dad, I have interviews lined up. This is our family's legacy, he interrupted, his voice cracking slightly. Your great-grandfather built this company from nothing. Are you really going to let it fail? I looked at the old black and white photo on his wall, my great-grandfather standing proudly in front of his first warehouse. The weight of 3 generations of family history pressed down on my shoulders. Tommy won't like this, I said finally. Dad sighed. Let me handle your brother. Will you do it? I stared out the window at the city skyline, watching my carefully planned future slip away. Yes, I heard myself say, I'll do it. My first day as CEO of Chin Global Trading felt surreal. Walking through the familiar hallways, I was greeted by faces I'd known since I was a teenager, running errands and filing paperwork during summer breaks. I spent the next 2 weeks buried in financial reports, my financial management degree finally proving useful in ways I hadn't expected. Mrs. Rodriguez, our head of accounting, and her team were invaluable, providing me with years of records and explaining various accounting practices that had become standard under my brother's influence. I hate to show you this, Mrs. Rodriguez said one evening, placing a thick folder on my desk, but you need to see where the money's really going. The numbers told a story of systematic mismanagement and wasteful spending. But it was when I started digging into the expense reports that my blood really began to boil. The documents revealed a pattern of excessive spending that made my stomach turn. An $80,000 Tesla Model S purchased 6 months ago under transportation expenses. A $112,000 monthly rent for a penthouse apartment in downtown listed as client entertainment facilities. A $25,000 shopping spree at Armani, somehow classified as professional development expenses. Has my father seen these reports? I asked Mrs. Rodriguez. She shook her head. Tommy always had a way of presenting things differently to your father, more vaguely. The details got buried in broader categories. I stayed late into the night, poring over every detail. The more I looked, the more I found weekend trips to Vegas labeled as client relationship building, designer suits and watches filed under professional image maintenance. The company was bleeding money through 1,000 expensive cuts, all traced back to my brother's spending habits. By the end of my audit, I had made my decision. I drafted a new company expense policy, one that would eliminate all these excessive privileges. Everyone, including Tommy and myself, would operate on base salary alone. No more luxury cars. No more penthouse apartments. No more shopping sprees disguised as business expenses. As I finished typing the last page of the new policy, I glanced at the old black and white photo of my great-grandfather on the wall. I'm going to fix this, I promised him silently. Whatever it takes. I knew the storm that was coming. Tommy wouldn't take these changes lying down. But I had the numbers, the documentation, and most importantly, the authority to make these necessary changes. Let him try to justify $1,200 swimming trunks as a business expense to my face. I was reviewing supplier contracts when my office door burst open with such force that it bounced off the wall. Tommy stormed in, his face red with rage, waving a copy of the new expense policy I had distributed that morning. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, slamming the document onto my desk. "You think you can just walk in here and take everything away from me?" I kept my voice steady. These are necessary changes to save the company. "Tommy, you've always been jealous of me, always trying to prove you're better than me. And now you're using Dad's temporary insanity to push me out." "No one is pushing you out," I said, "but the company can't afford to bankroll your lifestyle anymore." "My lifestyle?" He laughed bitterly. "I bring in half our clients. You think they want to meet in some cheap restaurant or drive around in a Toyota. They want to do business with a solvent company." I countered, "Which we won't be if." "Screw you, Alice." He kicked my visitor's chair across the room. "You're nothing but a jealous who couldn't stand seeing me succeed." "Unal, Dad." He stormed out, leaving papers scattered across my floor. I knew exactly where this was heading. Sure enough, that Saturday at our family dinner, I could feel the tension as soon as I walked in. Mom was unusually quiet as she served the pot roast, and Dad kept clearing his throat, his nervous tell. Finally, Mom couldn't hold back anymore. "Alice, don't you think you're being a little harsh with your brother? He's worked so hard for the company." "Has he?" I reached for my briefcase. I'd come prepared for this. "Would you like to see exactly how Tommy's been working hard with company money?" I spread out the documents across the dining table, right next to Mom's best china. Credit card statements, expense reports, receipts, all carefully highlighted and annotated. This is the penthouse he rented with company funds. This is the Tesla he bought. Here are the Vegas trips, the designer shopping spree, the $1,000 dinners. Mom shook her head. "He needs to entertain clients with $1,200 swimming trunks." I pointed to that particular receipt, with a $15,000 watch. "Your brother has always had good instincts for business," Mom insisted. "He knows how to make people feel special." Dad had been silent, studying the documents with a deepening frown. "These numbers," he finally said. "Tommy, is this accurate?" Tommy, who'd been sulking at the other end of the table, shrugged. "It's all legitimate business expenses. Alice is just too rigid to understand how modern business works." "That's enough," Dad cut in. He looked tired, older somehow. "Alice is right about the expenses, Tommy. They need to stop." He held up his hand when Tommy tried to protest. "But she's also going to help you learn to run the company properly." I blinked in surprise. "I am." Dad, not Ed, explained. "My plan is to eventually split the company between you two minus 50-50-us. But that only works if you both know how to manage it." He looked at me pleadingly. "Will you teach him?" I looked at Tommy, who was staring at his plate, jaw clenched. Teaching him would be like teaching a cat to swim, but I heard myself say, "Yes, I'll try." Looking at Tommy across the conference room table, I couldn't help but think about our childhood. While I was doing homework, he was racing his friends in the Porsche he got for his 16th birthday. When I spent summers learning the business, he was partying in the Hamptons. Mom and Dad always said he was living life to the fullest while I was too serious. I remember the Christmas when I asked for accounting software to practice with, and they got me a sweater. Tommy got a jet ski when I made honor roll. They nodded absently when Tommy managed to graduate with C's. They threw a massive party. It wasn't that they didn't love me. They just loved him more. Obviously, more demonstratively, more completely. Now, watching him slouch in his expensive chair during our budget meeting, I saw the results of that upbringing. Tommy, are you following these quarterly projections? I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. He glanced up from his phone. Yeah. Numbers going up is good. Numbers going down is bad. Can we wrap this up? It's a bit more complex than that, I said. These projections affect our inventory decisions for the next 6 months. He sighed dramatically, but put his phone down. Small victories. I made sure to invite him to every important meeting, client negotiations, supplier contracts, strategy sessions. If it mattered to the company, I wanted him there. Most of the time, he just sat there, looking bored, checking his watch, or playing with his pen. But occasionally, he'd surprise me. Why don't we try importing luxury pet products? He suggested during one meeting. Rich people are crazy about their dogs these days. We could mark up the prices like crazy. The market's already saturated, I explained gently. And the certification process for pet products is complicated. Another time, we should invest everything in cryptocurrency. My friend made millions last month. I had to take a deep breath before responding to that one. We need more stable investments for company funds. His ideas were usually impractical or too risky, but at least he was thinking about the business. It was more engagement than I'd seen from him in years. During a meeting with our biggest client, he actually paid attention the whole time. Afterwards, he said, you're pretty good at this. The way you handled their pricing concerns. It was probably the first genuine compliment he'd ever given me. Thanks, Tommy. Want to grab lunch and I can explain the negotiation strategy I used. Nah, got plans, he said, already heading for the door. But maybe next time. I watched him go, thinking about how patterns set in childhood become the architecture of our adult lives. Tommy never had to try because everything was handed to him. I always had to try twice as hard because nothing was handed to me. Now I was supposed to teach him what I'd spent years learning on my own. 8 years. 8 years of early mornings and late nights. 8 years of tough decisions and careful management. 8 years of teaching Tommy everything I knew while simultaneously running the company at peak performance. The numbers told the story better than I could. Profits were up 300% since I took over. 5 new branches opened across the state. A client list that had tripled in size. Shin Global Trading wasn't just surviving anymore, it was thriving. Dad's 70th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration of all that success. The private room at Golden Palace Restaurant was packed with family, close friends, and our most important business partners. The same faces who'd watched our company grow from near bankruptcy to industry leader. I'd helped Mom plan every detail, from the traditional red decorations to Dad's favorite 8-course menu. Even Tommy had shown up on time for once. He'd been unusually quiet lately, but I figured he was just nervous about his presentation of our latest expansion plans. After the Peking duck was served, Dad stood up, tapping his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. I have an important announcement, he said, smiling at all of us. After much thought, I decided it's time for me to fully retire. There were murmurs of appreciation around the room. Dad had been semi-retired for years, ever since he made me CEO, but he still kept an office and came in for major decisions. And so he continued, it's time to talk about succession, about legacy. My stomach tightened. Something in his voice. Qing Global Trading has been in our family for 3 generations, passed down from father to son. Today, I'm proud to announce that I'm transferring full ownership of the company to Tommy. The room erupted in applause. I sat there frozen as relatives congratulated my brother. This couldn't be happening. "Dad," I said, standing up. My voice cut through the celebrations. "What about our agreement? You promised to split the company between us." The room went quiet. Dad shrugged, not quite meeting my eyes. "The company has always passed through the male line, Alice. It's tradition. Besides, Tommy will make an excellent leader." Leader? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm the one who saved this company. I'm the one who turned it around. "Now, dear," Mom cut in, "don't make a scene. Tommy has natural leadership abilities. He'll make a better owner." Better. I laughed incredulously. Where was his natural leadership when the company was failing? Where was it during the 8 years I spent teaching him basic business concepts? Tommy stood up, straightening his tie. "Speaking of which, sis, you should start preparing to hand over your CEO duties. As the new owner, I'll be taking that position as well." He smirked at me across the table, the same smirk he'd had when he got that Porsche for his 16th birthday, when he took credit for my work in high school, when he spent company money like water because he knew he'd never face consequences. "You know what?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You all deserve each other. 8 years I spent fixing Dad's mistakes and covering Tommy's incompetence. 8 years of my life sacrificed for this family's legacy." "Alice," Mom gasped. "How dare you be so selfish?" "Selfish?" I turned to face her. Was I being selfish when I worked 60-hour weeks to save the company? When I gave up my own career dreams? When I tried to teach Tommy despite knowing he'd never learn? "You're just envious," Dad said coldly. "You've always been jealous of your brother." "Get out," Mom said, pointing to the door. "If you can't be happy for your brother's success, you can leave." I looked around the room at my relatives' uncomfortable faces, at the business partners who wouldn't meet my eyes, at my family's expressions of righteous indignation. Gladly. The next morning, I walked into the office one last time to clear out my desk. Tommy was there, feet up on his new desk, my old desk, watching me pack. "Don't forget to leave your keys," he smirked. I dropped my resignation letter on his desk without a word. 8 years of my life packed into one cardboard box. Thankfully, I'd always lived well below my means. The savings I'd accumulated bought me a beautiful apartment in the historic district. I decided to take a few months off, something I hadn't done since college. The first signs of trouble at Ching Global Trading started 3 months later. Mrs. Rodriguez called me over coffee. "They fired me," she said, hands wrapped around her cup. Tommy said I was too old school in my accounting practices. Over the next few weeks, more calls came. Tommy had replaced most of the senior management with his college buddies. The new CFO was a guy he used to party with, who'd barely passed business school. "He's back to his old spending habits," reported James, my former VP of operations, who'd also been let go. "Bought himself a new Maserati as a company car." But that's not the worst part. The worst part, as it turned out, was Tommy's solution to their first major crisis. When their main supplier raised prices, instead of negotiating or finding a reputable alternative, Tommy switched to a sketchy supplier offering suspiciously low prices. "The products are garbage," Sarah from Quality Control told me before she, too, was fired. "Half of them are defective. But Tommy won't listen, says we're being too picky." Within 6 months, the company had lost 3 major clients. Within 8 months, most of our long-term partners had jumped ship. The carefully built reputation I'd spent 8 years cultivating was crumbling in a matter of months. I heard it all through the grapevine, and I felt absolutely nothing. 1 year to the day after that fateful birthday dinner, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but some remnant of daughterly duty made me pick up. Alice, his voice sounded older, tired. We need to talk. I waited, letting the silence stretch between us. Tommy, he said. He hasn't worked out as we hoped. He cleared his throat. The company's in trouble. Real trouble. I'm aware, I said flatly. The business community isn't that big. I'd heard about their latest disasters through my professional network. We need you back, he said. You can name your terms. Full control, whatever salary you want. Tommy will step aside. I couldn't help but laugh. Now you want me back. After you threw away 8 years of my work because of tradition. This is our family's legacy, Alice. Your great-grandfather's company. You can't just let it die. My great-grandfather's company died the day you chose your son's ego over your daughter's confidence, I replied. The company I built for 8 years, that's what's dying now. And I don't care. How can you say that? His voice rose. This is your family's business, your heritage. You have a responsibility. No, Dad, I don't. Not anymore. You made your choice a year ago. Now you can live with it. Alice, please. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I blocked Mom's number, too, for good measure. Looking out my office window at the Manhattan skyline, I smiled. My new business card read, Alice Chen, Chief Executive Officer of Morton International, one of the largest import-export firms on the East Coast. I'd been headhunted for the position 6 months ago. Alice, my assistant poked her head in. The board members are ready for your presentation. I gathered my papers, straightening my jacket. The quarterly results were excellent. We've exceeded all projections, and I have plans to expand into 3 new markets. Your strategy for the Asian markets is brilliant, Richard Morton, the company owner, had told me last week. Best decision I ever made bringing you on board. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, doing exactly what I'd always wanted to do, being valued for exactly who I was. No family drama, no emotional manipulation, no brothers to babysit. Just pure business, run well. Miss travels fast in family circles. Even when you've cut off direct contact, it was my cousin Jennifer who told me over lunch, exactly 2 years after I'd walked out of Golden Palace restaurant. They filed for bankruptcy, she said, stirring her coffee. Tommy had to sell everything. The house, the Maserati, even that ridiculous watch collection of his. I took a sip of my wine, letting the information settle. And he's moved back in with Aunt Linda and Uncle James. They converted their home office into a bedroom for him. Jennifer hesitated. They're saying it's temporary, just until he gets back on his feet. I could picture it perfectly. Tommy in his childhood bedroom, Mom making his favorite meals, Dad making excuses for him. Some patterns really do never change. The details emerged over the following weeks through various family channels. The company's collapse had been spectacular. Not just a failure, but a cautionary tale that would be whispered about in business circles for years to come. The defective products had led to lawsuits. The mismanaged funds had led to debt. The alienated partners had led to isolation. Everything I'd built over 8 years had been dismantled in less than 2, leaving nothing but debts and broken relationships. Your father had to remortgage their house to cover some of the debts. My Aunt Maria reported during our monthly phone call. They're saying you could have prevented this if you'd come back when they asked. I laughed at that. Actually laughed out loud in my corner office, overlooking Central Park. Morton International had just posted its best quarter in company history under my leadership. The Wall Street Journal had run a profile on me last month, praising my innovative approach to international trade. They're still not getting it, are they? I said to Maria. This isn't about me abandoning them. This is about them never truly valuing what they had. Later that evening, I sat on my penthouse balcony, bought with my own money, earned through my own merit, watching the sunset over the city. I thought about Tommy, back in our parents' house, probably still blaming everyone but himself for what happened. I thought about Dad, who chose tradition over talent, and Mom, who chose favoritism over fairness. I thought about that old black and white photo of my great-grandfather that used to hang in the office. I wondered if they'd managed to save it from the liquidators, or if it had been sold along with everything else. A notification popped up on my phone. Another glowing review of our company's performance under my leadership. The headline read, Morton International CEO transforms company culture. A new era of growth. Should I feel guilty? That's what they all expect, the relatives who still talk to me, the old family friends who whisper about the prodigal daughter who let her family's legacy die. They think I should be torn up inside, haunted by what happened. But I'm not. Because here's the truth about legacies. They're not about buildings or brand names or even family traditions. They're about values. My great-grandfather built his company on hard work, integrity, and genuine business acumen. Those values didn't die with Chin Global Trading. They lived on through me, just in a different form.